As we received a lot of questions today around the Paycheck Protection Program, as some more guidance has come out, the banks have started sending around information, which is where you're going to apply, and you and presumably there's applications to be submitted on Friday. So these are the three big questions of the day: Paycheck Protection Program versus economic injury disaster loans. What is the definition of payroll costs? Is it net or is it gross with respect to withholdings? And the application's on Friday. There's limited funding available. What's going on with all that? So for the first question on the Paycheck Protection Program versus EIDL, a lot of people, including ourselves, have already applied for EIDL, and you're not supposed to double dip, but at the same time, none of us have received any funds for EIDL as far as I know. So I think what will probably happen with this is that even though the banks may ask if you've applied for EIDL funds already, I think some banks will probably say, then we're not going to do PPP, but we'll refinance your EIDL once you get it. Other banks will probably say, just turn down, we need an affirmation that you'll turn down the EIDL funds if we grant this loan to you. So I think there's a lot of, still a lot of vagaries around that. So, if you already submitted an EIDL application, just be prepared that your bank may ask questions about whether or not you've heard anything back yet, which might be one of your determining factors in terms of whether or not they're going to process the loan. So I'm hoping that something will change there to where they gave absolute definitive guidance. But for right now, it's still a vague area that if you've already applied for EIDL, what happens with the Paycheck Protection Program? And we've gotten conflicting answers from banks today. So in terms of the net pay or the gross pay, there's been a lot of questions about that. A lot of banks have said, done it one way that excludes withholdings. Others just say report some information. I think nobody has a good, clear answer on this. So I wanted to show you the source documents for all this stuff to show you why everybody's been confused and there's been no guidance. So we'll start with, and I know this is kind of wonky here, but I thought it'd be fun because people ask me, where am I getting information? I'm getting it from the law. So this is the law. And this is the definition of payroll costs. So what you see here is it's all this stuff, and that is all considered compensation. Because compensation is defined right here. So the other piece that it says don't include is right here. And again, we see $100,000. And we see compensation, which is defined up here as the sum of this stuff. But then we see this weird word called salary. What does that mean? Is this part of salary up here? Or is it just straight up salary, period, before arriving at a formula? So I built a spreadsheet that does it as arriving at a formula to show you guys how I think it would be calculated outside of any further guidance. So the other thing that's throwing people for a loop with net or gross is right here. So these chapters respectively are payroll tax. This is that whole railroad retirement thingy. And this right here is the biggie. That is federal withholding. So with federal withholding, that section of the code says that employers are responsible for remitting federal withholding and then remitting to the government taxes that we're escrowing on behalf of the employees. So that's why, the law would lead you to believe that you're supposed to exclude withholdings, which if we move over here to the Chamber of Commerce, which I think did a good job of, I think, interpreting the law. You would have thought they would have talked to somebody for the government. It's right here. This is 21, 22, and 24. And you see that right here, we're pretty aligned with the chamber. So they still have the same confusion here with salary dollars. Oh, sorry, my pen's down here. Versus the word compensation. However, if you roll over to our lovely federal government, this is straight from the Payroll Protection Program for borrowers fact sheets. So here they're telling you that this is the definition of payroll costs. And what you see here is that, federal withholding is not excluded. Sorry there. So we just have a bunch of questions about that. The stuff that I've seen from banker applications, some of them are following the chamber, some of them are following this. So I'm expecting some more guidance to come out in the next couple of days. It doesn't matter too much, I don't think, at this point, because right now we're in data collection mode. So I wanted to switch gears over to a spreadsheet that I built. Hopefully I can get reconnected here. Yay, okay. So this is the spreadsheet that I built that shows you what all you're going to need to do to calculate this correctly, I believe. So, really your starting point obviously is your raw payroll data, but in terms of supporting information that you need, that if I was going to audit this, I would want to see to make sure that you did it right. First off, I'd want your unemployment reports for each quarter for two reasons. One is that's the authoritative record of what you paid people during the quarter. And that also shows me how much was associated with pseudo taxes with that individual. So I would also want your internal quarterly payroll reports to see what was withheld at an employee level. And I would want to see that matched exactly what was on the 941. Oh, sorry. I don't know how to see if I can get my pen working here. Let's pretend I can't use the pen. So it's down here in the highlighted cell. So basically, I just want to have a three-way match between what you told me and what was actually on the payroll report. Same thing in terms of your health insurance bills. I'd want to see that and 401k contributions. So the way that I've interpreted things in this spreadsheet, and it's easy enough to change, is that I take my quarter because that's really the lowest level that I can take this with verifiable information. You could take this to a monthly level if you want, but I'm not quite sure because that's technically, I think, what they originally wanted you to do. I'm not quite sure if that's how deep you need to go or if quarterly is going to suffice. But the other guidance they came out with is that, this can be, you can just use all of 2019 as your data point if you want to. So what we did here is we took the quarter, did the calculation, which is column C, and then we subtracted out column G. We subtracted out column H, we added I, we added J, we added K, and then we annualized that number. And if that number was greater than 100 grand, we just used $25,000. If it wasn't, we used the number. And then we calculated out the annualized payroll costs and then try to calculate the FTEs for the quarter by just looking at, if there are 13 weeks in the quarter, how many weeks did they work? If they were full-time people, if they're hourly, how many hours did they work versus how many hours they could have worked based on the business days in the quarter. And then also, if they were part-time salary, how many business days did they work relative to the business days that they could have worked in the quarter to get to an average FTE count. So you do that, really for each quarter using your raw data. And as you can see, here I got rid of Luke Kuechly. Love that guy. And I added Thomas Davis. Then I get here. Oh, then I get down here in Q4. And I also added Ted Williams. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting a quarterly, a monthly average of each quarter, which then rolls back to this summary loan amount, which is basically saying, okay, for each quarter, what was the average of each of these? And then I would take the average of that to get to my loan amount. Whether you do this by 2.5 in the law or you do it 8 weeks plus 25%, it really becomes the same answer, really, to get me to a total loan amount of $55,279. But this is the way I would do it. And I think if you build something like this, then it's easy enough to modify the formulas to represent what ultimately ends up being the guidance. But this is what I would understand it to be today. Again, that may change, but this is what I would understand it to be today. And this way, you've at least got all your data pulled together. Last thing that I wanted to touch on, Friday, limited funds, because the document says, actually we'll go back and see where it says it now that I think about it. So if we go back to the document, that's the bill. Let's see, that gets to loan forgiveness. So when is my loan due? 2 years. This is another thing that changed. Interest rate, 5%. This was originally 4%. This was originally 10 years. That was straight from the law. So if I, let's see, may not be in this document. Yeah, it's not in this document in terms of saying that it's a first come, first serve, but that is in another document that's out there. So anyway, there it is. So this is the thing that has everybody scared. So I can't believe that that's ultimately going to stand, but for now, it's what's sitting here in the guidance document. So, I would encourage you to get your application in early, just so you know that it's in there. So hope